Hello, Thomas. My name is Wojtek. I'm a creative partner. I'm a creative director at independent agency in Poland, Brain. And here I am hosting a podcast during the Imagination Day 2024 event. It's such a pleasure to have you here. To the audience, Tomas Gonsorcik is the Chief Strategy Officer, Global Chief Strategy Officer of DDB, and he's just finished his presentation on the stage, which was fascinating, and we are going to talk about this and maybe some more things.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. So, to start it off, I was watching your presentation. I have some questions here written, so it's not like I'm checking my emails.
That's fine. I'll check mine too.
So, one of the slides that really kind of struck me is the slide where you're showing the car ads, the car, beauty shots, where pretty much every single car looked exactly the same. So, I think everyone who works in advertising has this idea of this, ubiquitous sea of sameness. Could you tell me what do you think about where is it coming from and why it doesn't work? Because I think we all agree that that's not the right way to do advertising, right? And
Yeah.
what can be done with that?
Yeah. So I think it's a great question, and I think there's like really interesting balance between respecting the category norms, like feelings of safety or comfort or health, and simply copying what everyone else is doing. And I think the main difference I think we're seeing is with the introduction of AI. I think a lot of those norms are just being made available by default. Therefore, when you are to produce a campaign, when you are to get your product to the market, it's very tempting for marketers to say, let's just deploy the technology that's available and get a product messaging out there and completely kind of not minimize, but almost feel like it's like the extra benefit. Like it's the creative part is something that would be nice to do, like to put on top of it. But really, if you run out of money or budget, no big deal because I'm getting the assets to the market.
Yeah, so basically job's done, right? And the creativity is an extra. And I think that's fundamentally wrong, right? Because what advertising as an industry says is the creativity. If this industry would not be successful at all if it were to sell, uniformity. But it's very interesting that you've mentioned AI because I also have a very similar observation that, yeah, I know I absolutely love, the tools that artificial intelligence gives us, including the, visual generators and so on and so on. But every time I use them, I start feeling like they are all absolutely beautiful, a bit kitschy, but they are beautiful and very well made, but they look very, very similar to each other. And you see, I was thinking that maybe we are entering in communications, not only just in advertising, but basically in visual communications, we are entering the age of, I call it mid-journeyization,
Yeah.
just like we had Disneyization, of showing emotions, right? Or role models, or Fordization, or McDonaldization. This is the new layer of standardization, but in semiotics. Do you think
Yeah.
that we are on the verge of something like that, and we are going to deal with the shallower
Super
communication?
interesting. I mean, it's what I would say is like it's absolutely a strategy, right? Of kind of adopting what the category is doing and simply trying to do it better, louder. The issue is that it's just too expensive, right? So I think no brand has got the money really to outspend the competition and simply outmuscle them because it is a strategy, but through pure top of mind awareness and mental availability, but it's just too expensive. So I think this whole conversation of how to be distinctive is, I think, in pursuit of making your marketing investment actually deliver for you. Um, so when it comes to what these tools kind of afford us, I think what becomes really really important, I think, worth paying money for, as marketers hire agencies, as they build in-house teams, is the notion of taste, right? So like your creative taste that you've honed over the last few decades gives you, I think, a specific view of like how this brand could be built. You could imagine what it could be. And through that imagination, you are building something new. And I think the taste allows you to, I think, build something distinctive that becomes a blueprint. And I think where the technology becomes helpful is then taking a blueprint, let's go like design system or like a brand world, and then scale it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scale it across all the channels, and I think that's where none of the young copywriters want to be out there making 20 variations of the same CRM email. They want to be coming up with the distinctive ideas, but I think that's where technology can really help.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. We should treat it as a tool, as a mean to an end, versus a solution to all the problems that we think
Hmm.
we would rather have creativity not try to solve. All right. Um, uh, but about the sea of sameness, I have a feeling that that when we look at pretty much the same ad
Hmm.
again and again and again, we desensitize, desensitize.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about.
All good. All good.
um, this whole emotional reaction that should take place in the audience hearts, not just brains but hearts, kind of disappear. And
Yep.
emotional side of advertising is absolutely crucial, right? And I
Yep.
think you've touched on that as well in your presentation.
I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that, and I think the notion of I think if you wanted to be like nerdy about it, like the emotional memory structure, right? Like something that creates a shortcut in your head that says, this brand like really makes me happy, or like
Mm-hmm.
this brand, I just feel like really in control of my health or my life. That is a super valuable asset. You know, I think the trick is um, to not rely solely on advertising to do the heavy lifting there.
Mm-hmm.
I think you really need to think about, how does the packaging of the product help you to do that? How is
Mm-hmm.
there like a surprise component that reinforces it? Is there something in retail that can help you do it? Is it the product itself that can, kind of instill some of that? But that magic of like when you buy an Apple product and you first open it, right? Like you can tell that like from that moment, like that structure of like, oh my god, this is a cool expensive looking designy product is reinforced, and
Yes.
the ad is not even necessary. So then when it comes to like really good ads, what they're really good at is some good emotional story. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the good thing about stories well told is that they're emotional, right? That they're interesting. So it's actually a really effective way of conveying the emotion across. I think the issue is like crafting a story that is actually triggering the reaction that you want. And I think that takes taste and craft, and I think the right talent doing it, and also delivering it in a way that touches the audience as opposed to desensitizes them. I think
Yeah.
there's this whole world of thinking that like it's all about frequency, right? Like if you drive in a frequency with your ads, like consumer will eventually get it, and then they'll buy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what it does more often than not is actually desensitizes them. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think from some of the data that we're seeing, it is not about your short form social content. It is about a longer piece of really interesting content that people will spend time with on their own, and will allow them to like really appreciate what the brand is trying to do.
Yeah, well, I remember the quote from Howard Gossett. People read what interests them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an ad, and that's basically that, right? But of course, I completely agree with you. It's not just about advertising. And when you were saying that, I immediately started thinking of Apple. And
Hmm.
this is a perfect example, right? Because the iPhone box, the whole the sensor, the the sensory, feeling you get when you unwrap it from this very pleasant foil to the opening of this box, and you feel like it loses the the air pressure increases in this box. This is something that already makes you feel good, and
Totally,
I
but it doesn't
yeah,
have to be expensive. I mean, look at
yeah,
McDonald's for instance. Like
yeah,
that's a
exactly,
beautiful brand, but again, like the way the fries sit, like the way it's a bit messy in the brown bag,
yes,
like that creates a certain reaction. It's like, okay, this is maybe like a playful meal,
mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. It doesn't need to be expensive or something that feels like elevated. I think every brand can have its own way of interpreting it.
Mm-hmm. And when your brand gets all these little touch points like packaging and delivery and everything and smell, all the qualities nailed, then the advertising is like a cherry on the top, that basically just underlines everything. And as you said, it doesn't need to be 50 pieces of content, that just bombard people, with reasons to believe to buy that product, but even a longer piece of beautifully crafted. So they're just like the film that you were showing, right, for
Hmm.
the Disney that's been making rounds lately. It's great, by the way. It makes people feel good, and I believe it's the same with like with people, right? If you try to think of someone you met 20 years ago, you don't necessarily remember what that person told you, but you definitely remember how that person made you feel, you know?
Yeah.
I think the emotions, they get encoded within us much deeper. So if a person, watches an ad or any other comes in contact with a brand, and that brand makes that person feel better, so that immediately doesn't need to lead to that person putting on shoes and running to the shop to buy that product. But next time that person is in the shop and is choosing between that product and the competitor's products that feel good, memory is going to kick in,
Yeah.
and I think this is exactly what we are trying to do. But what is it like, right? We've been, in our industry, we've been constantly bombarded with, arguments and spreadsheets that prove that that creativity is secondary, the
Hmm.
overinflated media plans. But it's all about balance, of course. One thing has to support another, right? But okay, that's one thing. You had in your presentation, you had something very controversial. Ideas are poison. I agree with that, but why don't you elaborate a little?
I think it's Becky Peel, like the lead analyst from Contagious, like the part of the Lions group, who I think had a whole presentation on. I think, like buying brave ideas is just really hard because
Hmm.
it makes you feel unwell. It's I did a kind of talk in the US maybe a couple of years ago now. Again, we had a senior client there kind of talk about their approach to bravery, and they use this gif from the movie Barbie where like the Barbie goes and says like that do any of you feel like dying? It's like that because that's how she feels when she's about to approve a really brave idea. Like, oh
Hmm.
my god, someone from like legal is going to like ask me to get fired. Like someone from finance is going to say, why are you wasting money on something that is unproven?
Hmm.
So these people are basically getting on. They're agreeing to go through weeks and months of really painful internal approval, buy-in, just to make this thing happen. So I think that's why it feels like poison. And I think the way the argument goes is like the best way to deal with it is to actually build like very rational support structures underneath it. So, for instance, like very early on, for the marketer to speak to the CFO and say, okay, this is how we're going to think about our investment into marketing. This is where creativity comes in. This is where we can take some risks. Everyone's on board with it.
Hmm.
And then at the other end, don't just say to the team and the agency, like, hey, go and be brave. Because that's the first thing that people will do is just say, I'm definitely not doing that because I'll get fired. So I think what some organizations are doing, like McDonald's, like they have this wonderful program called Feel Good Awards, where
Hmm.
um, the bravest campaigns from around the world get submitted, and then the entire system votes on the best performing work. And the team, that marketer, gets an award, gets recognition for their bravery. So I think it becomes an incentive, right, for someone to say, like, okay, like this will be good for me. This will be good
Hmm.
for my career. I should commit, which is like I think a very like pragmatic way of thinking about it. But I think that's what's needed because otherwise you're left with, again, like your emotions of
Hmm.
fear.
Yeah, but you see, you need the entire structure to kind of offset that what I call allergic reaction
Hmm.
to the ideas, because I completely agree with the wording that ideas are a poison. Now on one hand, ideas are a poison if you are a person that are not necessarily like by default creative, and a lot of people in our industry are like that, right? But most people, especially people on the side of the brands and and the strategy, are more analytical, right? And it's absolutely natural that when you hear something that kind of challenges your status quo, right? It kind of does screw your thinking a little bit. This is the power of great insight. It changes your perspective, and
Yeah.
once you understand something like that, your life kind of changes, because you can't understand something again,
Yeah.
right? So that's why it is kind of scary, and I have a feeling that most often the ideas, great ideas, get flushed down the toilet just because of that. We think the idea is bad, but the fact is we just kind of try to defend ourselves. I think there's even like evolutionary theory that says that humans, were not really wired, to be creative. Humans were wired to actually, try to set up a relatively stable system, right? Where you know where your berries are, you know where the deer is, you know the water that way, right? You more or
Completely.
less know what the dungeon looks
Completely.
like, and that's it. That's it. And don't like try to stir the pot too much. So maybe maybe we are fighting our very deep nature. I don't know.
I think it's exciting. That's the thing. It's like, like I mean, the point is also like, I think we can be perfectly fine, kind of going down the path of like very like rational and like data driven work. But one, I think it's not an efficient way of creating growth. I don't think it's like as hardworking as a great creative idea. And two, I think it's just kind of boring. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like I think what I love about our industry is that it's a little bit messy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that's great. I think
Yeah.
that's what makes like coming to work interesting.
Yeah, but this is exactly the thing that I always tell younger people. That this industry can be a nightmare and can be absolute dream.
Yeah.
It only depends on the quality of ideas you come up with. If you come
Nice.
up with
Nice.
crap ideas, the job is gonna be crap because that crap idea is gonna sell, it's gonna get produced. You're gonna have to work with that. Well, you come up with a great
Totally.
idea and it's fun. It's just fun. Now, a fun. I don't mean funny ideas, right? Because you can do very poignant and sentimental, advertising, and I'm all for purpose-led advertising. That solves, at least aims to solve some problems. But that's also exciting. That also,
Hmm.
adds another layer of like purpose to our jobs, right? It just feels less like a job and more like a life well lived.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Nice.
so yeah, we kind of start sounding like motivational speakers here now, but this is a good motivation
I
here,
love
everyone.
it.
Now I have two questions that I ask everyone. And of course, because Imagination Day is really tied to technology, and we even have a festival here. It's called Innovation Ad, and so on. I'm gonna ask you something about technology, and the first question from that area is there one piece of technology that you are looking forward most to? Something that's just around the corner that excites you the most?
Mm. Ooh, that's interesting. Um, I mean, I think it's here. I'm not sure it's around the corner. I mean, I love the ability of taking everything that we know about the subject and then sensitize it into areas that an individual wouldn't be able to get to by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you think about like ways into strategy, ways into creative, I think there's an absolute charm and beauty in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's a second question about technology, which is it's a strange question. It's a strange question.
Let's
You're
go.
gonna be surprised because the thing I want to ask this question because I see the technology advancement, not only advertising but for everywhere, tends to be really fetishized, right? People
Yeah.
fetishized it, and I have a feeling that we really tend to focus too much on what's about to come, but we never think about the technology that already came and
Hmm.
didn't exactly turn out to be as great as we wanted it to be. So the
Yeah.
question would be, if you had this power to to click a finger and a technology of your choice disappears from the whole world.
Oh my God, taxes.
Yeah, or timesheets.
Timesheets. That's a great question. Yeah, I love it. I think it's like, I think like I personally, I'm an optimist about technology.
Mm,
I also admire that I think that industry does a really great job of hyping everyone up about like the dream of it. It's
mhm,
like, okay, like cheap travel to Mars.
mhm,
Robots for everyone. And I think we can learn from that.
mhm,
I
mhm,
think we still, like as an industry, spend too much time of like, oh, this agency is falling apart. Like this client is going for a page. Oh, this idea is maybe fake. Shouldn't have been awarded. As opposed to as an industry saying, like this is a great place to work. To your point, and
mhm.
like this is where like young people, like young, smart, talented, creative people, can make the best work of their careers.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think it's one of those where it's like, sure, I think timesheets and taxes would be great to go away.
totally.
But I think more than that, I see it as like being a competitive guy. I see it as like a great, like, call to arms for us.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's again a challenge. That's what I love about this job as well, because it involves a lot of rivalry, and competing. But it's like so purely intellectual, and I do have a feeling that very often it gets very artistical as well, and just it just feels so good. But for the last few minutes, let's change the subject a little bit, because we are in the Central Eastern Europe, right? And you're from Slovakia, you're from Košice, so we are technically neighbors, because I grew up in Wisła, which is a
Nice.
tiny town
Nice.
in Beskid Mountains on the border with Slovakia, and you basically are heading the strategy, of one of the world's biggest and most creatively and business-wise acclaimed networks. And if you want to tell us about how do you feel, with being on the top of that mountain, what do you see? What do you see from there?
I don't know. It's like I've whenever I try to be on the mountain, like I love being in with the teams and with the work. I think it's I think we've spoken about this a little bit. I am proud of where I'm from. I absolutely love the culture and our history and what we have, what we can offer to the world. And honestly, I wish there were more leaders from Poland, from Czech Republic, from Slovakia in international roles. Because I think there's a beautiful history to us. I think the past that we have, the like communist past, I think taught us all to like think outside of the system, like be very entrepreneurial. There's a level of grit, and I think we can be quite hard. But I think that some of the best like graphic design, best storytelling, best movie making over the decades came from this part of the world. And I think it's because there is a beauty, I think, to our struggle, to like the lives that we live here, and I think it's a fantastic story for the world. So I think I love DDB. I love what I do, but I think I'm really hopeful that we can have more people coming from this part of the world and take positions in Western world, like Western Europe, in the US, and around the market, because just Poland, I mean, is a fantastic, really huge economy that's doing fantastic creative work. There's no reason why the talent shouldn't be kind of traveling and being successful on a bigger stage.
Yeah, that's my wish as well. I have traveled a fair bit from within the advertising industry as well, and I have this observation that we, Central Eastern Europeans, we have all the elements, we have all the ingredients, we have the creativity, which I think that the origins, of that creativity are slightly different, because as you mentioned, in our region, it was mostly against the odds. It was all somehow somewhat a rebel. Whereas when you look at UK or US, it was mostly about expressing one's freedom. So the result might be somewhat similar, but but the drivers are slightly different. However, the
Completely.
ingredients, all the elements are here, and it will be great, to kind of, to as you said, like take it to the to the next level. So maybe that's our hope for the future.
Fantastic.
So
Thank you.
thank you very much for this conversation. I hope you all enjoyed our chat, and we talk later, about
Thank you
a
so
lot of
much.
other
Thank
stuff.
you for having me. This was great.
It's my pleasure.
Nice. Thank you.